What would you do if your billionaire ex-husband showed up at the venue where you work and started ordering you around like you were his personal assistant? Can you picture that moment of pure humiliation, being treated like low-level staff by the man who spent years telling you your career was worthless? But here's what makes it incredible. He has no idea the woman he's mocking actually owns the entire venue, the security, the contracts, everything. And what happened next proves that the people who underestimate you never see the empire you built in silence. This is about what happens when arrogance meets a contract you can't break. This is how the woman he called unambitious became the authority who canceled his wedding in front of 300 guests. Before we continue with the story, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Oh, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. We love seeing that. Her name was Arline Holder. At 32 years old, she had been divorced from Lucien Lopez for 3 years. When they were married, Lucien treated her ambitions like a joke. He'd dismiss her ideas constantly, mock her interest in event planning, tell her she should have studied finance, that working with venues was beneath a Lopez wife. "You're wasting your potential on party planning," he'd say. "I married you thinking you'd grow up and do something serious." Can you imagine building a life with someone who made you feel small every single day? The man who's supposed to be your partner, constantly treating your dreams like they're embarrassing. Arline worked as an assistant event coordinator at a boutique hotel when they were married. She'd come home excited about a successful corporate gala, and Lucien would scoff. "Still arranging centerpieces? When are you going to get a real career?" After 6 years of contempt, Lucien filed for divorce. He said, "I need a wife who operates at my level, not someone playing with tablecloths." 8 months after the divorce, Lucien started dating Sasha Whitmore, a 4-year-old influencer who loved yachts and charity galas. Meanwhile, Arline took her divorce settlement, £2.3 million, and did something audacious. She quietly purchased a controlling stake in Citadel Luxury Venues, a struggling but prestigious event company in London. The crown jewel was the Grand Citadel, an exclusive venue that hosted royalty and billionaires. Arline worked relentlessly, restructured operations, upgraded security systems, built relationships with elite clients. Within 2 years, the Grand Citadel became the most sought-after venue in Europe. Arline didn't just own it. She understood every operational detail. Some days she was negotiating 7-figure contracts. Other days she was on the floor managing crisis situations. And when high-stakes events needed flawless execution, she'd wear an earpiece and work as the discreet crisis manager herself. She loved it, every strategic decision. She'd gone from being Lucien's disappointment to being a silent power broker in the luxury events industry. But she stayed invisible. No press announcements, no social media reveals, just impeccable service and airtight contracts. One Saturday morning, the Grand Citadel was preparing for its most expensive booking of the year. Arline was in her private owner's suite, reviewing the final security protocols when her head of operations, Marcus, called urgently. "Miss Holder, we have a situation developing with the Lopez wedding. The groom is making unauthorized changes, and the bride is demanding we bypass safety protocols." "I'm handling this personally," Arline said quietly, fastening her earpiece. She walked onto the venue floor, dressed in her professional black suit that signaled authority without announcing ownership. She picked up the event tablet and headed toward the grand foyer. Then she stopped cold, standing at the entrance, surrounded by his groomsmen and loudly critiquing the floral arrangements, was Lucien Lopez. And he was looking directly at her. This adaptation maintains the exact narrative rhythm, emotional beats, and structural pacing of the competitor, while seamlessly integrating your high-stakes billionaire wedding venue story with Arline and Lucien. Arline learned to pretend the divorce didn't hurt. She signed the papers with steady hands, nodded through Lucien's lawyer's thin smiles, and walked out of the glass tower with a settlement figure in her account and a hollow ache under her ribs. The world thought she'd been paid off to disappear from his orbit. Lucien certainly did. That suited her perfectly. The first thing she bought was not a car, or an apartment, or revenge disguised as a handbag. She bought information. Quiet meetings with corporate lawyers in discreet offices, coffee with a friend from university who now worked in mergers, late-night calls to an old hotel manager who owed her a favor. Piece by piece, she mapped the world. Lucien mocked. The event industry he treated like background noise, the one she actually understood. That was how she found Citadel luxury venues. On paper, it was impressive. A portfolio of historic mansions and glass-walled skyscraper spaces, all trading on exclusivity and security. In reality, the company was bleeding. A recent scandal with a celebrity client, a board divided, a founder ready to cash out. Most people saw risk. Arlene saw leverage. Her settlement alone wasn't enough to swallow the company, so she did what Lucien always claimed she couldn't. She negotiated. She met with a private equity partner who specialized in distressed luxury assets, proposing a quiet buy-in if she put up a significant portion of her settlement and stayed on as an operations consultant. She met with minority shareholders individually, listening more than she talked, learning where their loyalties were soft and where they were brittle. Arlene understood something they didn't. Prestige venues didn't live or die on balance sheets. They lived on trust, and she knew how to rebuild that. The deal took 8 months of careful moves. Her name never appeared in the rumors that floated through Lucien's circles. To him, she was still the ex-wife somewhere beneath his radar, probably arranging flowers in a mid-range hotel. He never realized that, in quiet boardrooms and signature pages, she was wiring the money he'd given her straight into the foundation of something bigger than him. When Citadel luxury venues finally changed hands, the press release named a faceless investment group as the new controlling entity. Buried in the structure of that group, protected by layers of corporate anonymity, was Arlene Holder. Her official title was benign, Senior Operations Strategist. Her real position was far more potent. The Grand Citadel came with the deal. It was the crown jewel of the portfolio, a fortress of glass and stone on a private estate, protected by state-of-the-art security and a vetting process so strict that most people bragged more about booking it than about the actual wedding. Royals, tech founders, old money dynasties, all fought for dates. It was the kind of place Lucien loved, the kind of place he assumed would always belong to men like him. The first time Arlene walked through its empty ballroom as owner, the lights were off and the chandeliers were just shapes in the dark. She ran her fingers along the cool marble of the balcony rail and imagined table layouts, crisis plans, exit routes. The venue manager trailing behind her thought she was simply inspecting operations. "Is it what you expected?" he asked. Arlene looked up at the vaulted ceiling, at the security cameras tucked into elegant moldings, at the massive doors that could keep anyone in or out with a single command. "It will be," she said. From that day on, she worked in the shadows. She redesigned contracts with clauses that protected the venue and quietly shifted power to the final authority, on-site. She insisted on high-security protocols, mandatory deposits, non-negotiable conduct standards. Clients saw a beautiful palace where their perfect nights would unfold. Arlene saw a system she controlled down to the last access card. She let the world believe the Grand Citadel belonged to some faceless conglomerate. The staff knew her as the crisis expert who appeared when things were fragile and left when everything was under control. No one outside the company realized the woman with the discreet earpiece and simple necklace could shut down any event with a single signature. Lucien would learn that later. The booking request came through on a Tuesday morning, flagged as high priority by the sales team. Arlene was reviewing quarterly financials in her private office when the notification pinged across her screen. Lopez Whitmore wedding. Estimated guest count 320. Budget exceeding £850,000. She stared at the name for a long moment before opening the file. Lucien Lopez, billionaire finance executive, marrying Sasha Whitmore, social media personality and philanthropist. Preferred date, June 14th. Requirements: maximum security, international press coordination, celebrity guest accommodation, and a specific note that read, "Client expects nothing short of perfection, and has made it clear that no detail is too expensive." Of course he did. Arlene scrolled through the initial consultation notes. Lucien had walked into the Grand Citadel 3 weeks earlier with Sasha on his arm, surveyed the space like he was inspecting a merger, and declared it acceptable before his assistant even finished the tour. He demanded the premium security package, the one reserved for heads of state. He wanted drone detection systems, perimeter surveillance, background checks on every vendor. He wanted the venue closed to all other events for the entire weekend. He wanted his name on everything. The sales director had practically glowed writing up the contract. This was the kind of booking that made annual targets. Arlene approved it with 2 clicks and a single instruction to her operations lead. I'll be on site as crisis manager for this event. Do not mention my name to the client. Over the following weeks, Lucien's demands escalated. He rejected the first floral proposal because the roses weren't rare enough. He insisted on flying in a specific champagne that required refrigerated transport and customs clearance. He added a last-minute fireworks display that needed council permits and safety inspections. Every email from his assistant carried the same implicit threat. Lucien Lopez does not accept anything less than flawless. Sasha was no better. She changed the seating chart 4 times, rearranged the ceremony layout twice, and sent the catering team into chaos by demanding a menu rewrite 6 days before the event. Her Instagram posts teased the wedding of the century at London's most exclusive venue, accompanied by carefully angled photos that never quite revealed the location. What made Arlene's jaw tighten was the tone. Every request dripped with entitlement. As though the venue existed solely to absorb their whims, Lucien sent a message through his wedding planner complaining that the standard contract's conduct clause was unnecessarily restrictive, and asking if it could be relaxed for a client of his stature. Arlene's head of operations brought her the request personally, clearly uncomfortable. He wants the behavior standards waived, Marcus said carefully. And he's asking if we can remove the safety protocol compliance section to save on the final security line item. He says it's redundant given his own team. Arlene read the email twice. Lucien wanted to cut corners on the one thing that gave her absolute contractual authority, the mandatory safety standards that allowed the final authority to shut down any event in violation. Tell him no, she said evenly. The contract is non-negotiable. If he wants the Grand Citadel, he signs it as written. Marcus hesitated. He's threatening to book elsewhere. He won't. Arlene closed the file. There is nowhere else that matches his ego. 3 days later, Lucien's assistant returned the signed contract without further argument. Buried in the fine print he'd barely skimmed was the clause that would destroy him. Any breach of safety protocol or conduct standards gave the venue owner the right to terminate the event immediately, with no refund. Arlene filed the contract in her private system and marked her calendar. June 14th. She'd be there. Arlene arrived at the Grand Citadel at dawn, 3 hours before the first vendor trucks would roll through the security gates. The June morning was cool and silent. The kind of quiet that existed only before a storm of 300 people descended on a single location. She parked in the private lot reserved for executive staff, pulled her hair into a sleek low bun, and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Black tailored suit, simple diamond studs, no rings. The kind of outfit that signaled authority without announcing it, that allowed her to move through crowds without drawing attention until the moment she needed to command a room. She fastened the discreet earpiece into place and tested the connection. Crisis manager on site, she said quietly. Marcus's voice crackled back immediately. Good morning, Miss Holder. Security sweep complete. Vendor arrivals begin in 90 minutes. The client's team is scheduled for final walkthrough at 10. Understood. I'll be in the East Wing office until then. She walked through the service entrance, past the industrial kitchens already humming with prep work, past the florists unloading crates of white peonies and garden roses. No one looked twice at her. The crisis manager was a fixture at high-stakes events, the person who appeared when logistics fractured and disappeared when everything ran smoothly. Most guests never even knew the role existed. That was exactly how Arlene preferred it. By 9, the venue had transformed. The grand ballroom glowed with soft light filtering through tall windows. The ceremony space outside was a masterpiece of white silk draping and climbing greenery. The bars were stocked, the sound system tested, the security perimeter activated. Everything looked flawless because Arlene had spent 2 years building a system where flawless was the only option. She moved through the space methodically, checking sightlines, confirming backup generator status, reviewing the guest list against the security clearance database. Her earpiece fed her a steady stream of updates. Catering on schedule. String quartet arrived and setting up. Photographer requesting early access to the bridal suite. At 10:15, she was standing near the main entrance when Lucien's convoy pulled up. 3 black SUVs, unnecessary and theatrical. Lucien stepped out first, wearing sunglasses and a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Sasha followed in a white rehearsal dress, phone already out, filming herself approaching the venue. Arline stepped back into the shadow of a marble column and watched. Lucien walked through the doors like he owned the building, which would have been amusing if it weren't so predictable. His wedding planner trailed behind, tablet in hand, trying to keep up as he fired off observations and demands. He paused in the foyer, surveying the floral installations with a critical eye. "The roses should be higher," he said loudly. "I specifically requested dramatic impact." The florist, a woman who'd won international awards, started to respond, but Lucien had already moved on, pointing at the seating chart display. "This needs to be repositioned. The entrance flow is wrong." Arline's jaw tightened. She touched her earpiece. "Marcus, I need the final payment confirmation. Has the Lopez account cleared the remaining balance?" A pause. "Checking now. Miss Holder, there's a hold on part of the security line item." His assistant said they're disputing the drone detection fee. Of course they were. "Flag it," Arline said quietly. "That's a contract violation if it's not resolved before the ceremony start time." She watched Lucien continue his lap of the venue, oblivious to the fact that the woman in the tailored suit observing from 20 feet away held the power to end his entire day with a single phone call. Not yet, she thought. Let him get comfortable first. Arline was reviewing the revised timeline with the head of security when she felt it. The specific quality of attention that preceded recognition. She looked up and found Lucien staring at her from across the foyer, his expression shifting from confusion to something sharper. Surprise, then amusement. She watched him process it. The earpiece, the tablet, the professional uniform that marked her as staff. His face broke into a grin that she remembered too well, the one that always preceded cruelty disguised as humor. He walked toward her with long, confident strides, and she had exactly 3 seconds to decide how to handle this. She chose composure. "Arline?" Lucien stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, head tilted like he'd discovered something fascinating and slightly pathetic. "Arline Holder." "I can't believe it. Mr. Lopez." She kept her voice professionally neutral. "Welcome to the Grand Citadel. If you need anything, the coordination team is available to assist you." He laughed. Actually laughed. Loud enough that several people nearby turned to look. "This is incredible," he said, shaking his head. "You're working here? At my wedding venue?" He looked her up and down, taking in the earpiece, the tablet, the discreet suit. "Still playing with flowers and tablecloths, Arline? I knew you'd end up somewhere in events, but I figured you'd at least have worked your way up to something more than staff by now." Arline felt the familiar heat rise in her chest, the old humiliation trying to surface. She breathed through it. "I'm managing logistics today," she said evenly. "If you'll excuse me, I have several items to confirm before the ceremony." "Managing logistics." Lucien repeated the words like they were a punchline. He turned slightly, addressing the comment to his groomsmen who'd wandered over. "My ex-wife. Everyone. The one who thought event planning was a serious career. Looks like she finally found a job where she belongs, serving people." One of the groomsmen, clearly uncomfortable, tried to smile. Sasha appeared at Lucien's elbow, eyes flicking between them with obvious curiosity. "Who's this, babe?" "This is Arline," Lucien said, slipping an arm around Sasha's waist. "My ex, the one I told you about who couldn't understand ambition if it was explained to her with diagrams." He looked back at Arline, his smile sharpening. "I have to say, though, at least you finally accepted your level. That's growth, I suppose. Better to be a small fish swimming happily than a small fish pretending to be a shark, right?" Arline met his eyes and let the silence stretch for just a moment longer than comfortable. "The venue requires all guests to respect staff protocols," she said quietly. "I'll make sure your coordination team has everything they need." She turned to walk away. "Hey, Arline," Lucien called after her, voice carrying across the marble floors. "While you're managing logistics, could you check on the champagne? I'm paying enough for this place that I expect the staff to actually be competent." She stopped, turned back. Let him see her face, calm and unbothered. "Of course, Mr. Lopez. I'll handle it personally." His grin widened, satisfied. He thought he'd won something. Arline walked away, touching her earpiece as she moved out of sight. Marcus, she said softly. Pull the complete payment records for the Lopez contract. I want every outstanding item documented and time-stamped. We may need to activate the termination clause. Understood. She reached the private corridor that led to her office and allowed herself one long, steadying breath. Not yet, but soon. The champagne request was only the beginning. 20 minutes later, Arlene was coordinating with the catering director when Lucien found her again. He'd clearly decided that having his ex-wife on staff was an entertainment opportunity too good to waste. Arline, he called across the pre-ceremony reception area, loud enough to make heads turn. We have a problem with table 7. The place cards are in the wrong order. Can you fix that? She looked up from her tablet. Table 7's arrangement had been personally approved by his wedding planner twice. There was no problem. I'll send someone to review it immediately, she said. No, I want you to do it. Lucien walked closer, smiling that same predatory smile. Since you're so good at details, right? That's what you always told me, that you had an eye for details. Arlene set down her tablet and walked to table 7. She adjusted 2 place cards that were already correct, moving them a fraction of an inch while Lucien watched with his arms crossed. When she finished, he inspected her work like a teacher grading a disappointing student. Better, he said. See, you're good at this. You should have just accepted that from the beginning instead of trying to pretend you were destined for something bigger. She didn't respond. She walked back to her tablet and resumed her work. 15 minutes later, he interrupted her again. This time he wanted her to personally bring waters to his groomsmen in the groom's suite. Then it was a request to find his mother a specific type of sparkling water that wasn't on the venue's beverage list. Then he needed her to confirm that the lighting in the ceremony space was actually acceptable, because he didn't trust the technical team to understand elegance. Each request was delivered with the same tone, condescending, amused, designed to remind her that she was there to serve, and he was there to be served. Arlene fulfilled every single demand, with flawless professionalism. She brought the waters. She sourced the sparkling water from a backup vendor. She stood beside him during the lighting check and confirmed that the levels met his standards. Her expression never changed. Her voice never wavered. What Lucien didn't see was Marcus feeding updates into her earpiece with increasing urgency. The security payment is still flagged as incomplete. They're trying to negotiate it down 30 minutes before ceremony start. The drone detection system shows an unauthorized device in the perimeter. Protocol requires client confirmation before we proceed. His assistant is asking us to bypass the guest check-in process for 6 late arrivals who aren't on the cleared list. Each violation stacked on top of the last, building a case that Lucien was too arrogant to realize he was creating. The final demand came at 1:15, 45 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. Lucien found Arline near the bar and snapped his fingers to get her attention like she was a dog. I need you to move the entire seating chart display to the other side of the entrance. It's blocking the photographer's shot. The seating chart was a 6-foot custom frame anchored to the floor with professional rigging. Moving it would require a crew and at least 30 minutes. Mr. Lopez, that installation is structural. Moving it at this stage would delay your ceremony start time. Then you'd better work fast. He leaned in slightly, voice dropping just low enough that only she could hear. Or is this too complicated for someone at your level? Arline looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Behind her, through her earpiece, Marcus's voice cut through. Miss Holder, we have a critical safety violation. The unauthorized drone is now inside the secure perimeter. We need final authority approval to proceed or shut down. She touched her earpiece. I'm on my way. Arline walked directly to the security command center, a discreet room tucked behind the main ballroom that monitored every camera, sensor, and access point in the venue. Marcus was waiting, his expression grim, a laptop open to a split-screen display of perimeter feeds. Show me, Arlene said. He pointed to the top right quadrant. A small drone, commercial grade, hovering just inside the eastern perimeter fence. The timestamp showed it had breached the boundary 4 minutes ago. Our system detected it immediately, Marcus explained. Standard protocol is to deploy countermeasures, but we can't activate them without the advanced drone detection package. He pulled up the contract on a second screen. The client declined that module, said it was an unnecessary expense. Arlene leaned closer, scanning the document. There it was, highlighted in yellow. Advanced aerial surveillance package. Declined by client. Lucien's assistant's initials were right next to it. Dated 2 weeks ago. That package isn't optional, Arlene said quietly. It's a mandatory safety requirement for outdoor ceremonies with more than 200 guests. It's in Section 12 of the venue standards. Marcus nodded. I know. His team pushed back, said they had their own security and didn't need our system. We told them the contract required compliance with all safety protocols, but they refused to pay the additional fee. He gestured to the drone feed. Now we have an unidentified aircraft in our airspace, no countermeasures available, and 300 guests about to sit in an exposed ceremony space. Arlene felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. This wasn't just corner cutting. This was negligence that put people at risk and gave her every legal right to stop the event. Has anyone contacted the client about this? His assistant. She said to handle it quietly, and that Mr. Lopez doesn't want to be disturbed before the ceremony. Marcus met her eyes. She actually suggested we just ignore it. Arlene pulled out her phone and photographed the drone feed, the contract section, and the communication log. She saved them to the secure incident file that only she could access. Where's the wedding planner? With the bride. Get her. Now. 2 minutes later, Victoria Chen, Lucien's lead wedding planner, hurried into the security room looking harried and confused. Her expression shifted when she saw Arlene's face. We have a critical safety breach, Arlene said, turning the laptop toward her. The client declined mandatory security protocols, and now, we have an unauthorized drone in the ceremony space. Per the contract, this constitutes a direct violation of venue safety standards. Victoria's face went pale. Can't we just delay the ceremony until it's resolved? The equipment needed to resolve it was declined by your client to save money. Arlene's voice was calm, factual. The breach occurred because Mr. Lopez refused to comply with mandatory safety requirements. That's a contractual violation. What does that mean? Arlene looked at her steadily. It means I need to speak with Mr. Lopez immediately. And it means this event may not be able to proceed. Victoria's eyes went wide. You can't be serious. There are 300 guests arriving right now, which is exactly why this is a critical safety issue. Arlene picked up her tablet. Take me to the groom. The groom's suite was chaos wrapped in expensive cologne. Lucien stood at the center, surrounded by groomsmen adjusting ties and photographers capturing candid moments of pre-ceremony confidence. He was laughing at something when Victoria knocked and entered, Arlene 2 steps behind her. Lucien's smile faltered when he saw Arlene, then twisted into irritation. Are you serious right now? He gestured at his watch. I'm getting married in 20 minutes and you're bothering me? Whatever you need, handle it yourself. That's literally your job, Mr. Lopez. We have a security breach that requires your immediate attention, Victoria said, her voice tight. There's an unauthorized drone in the ceremony airspace, and we don't have the countermeasures to remove it because your team declined the mandatory safety package. Lucien waved a dismissive hand. So handle it. Call the police, call whoever. I paid enough for this venue that you should have backup plans for everything. The backup plan was the system you refused to pay for, Arlene said quietly. His eyes snapped to her. Excuse me, the advanced aerial surveillance package. Your assistant declined it 2 weeks ago to reduce costs. That system is contractually mandatory for outdoor events of this size. Without it, we cannot guarantee guest safety. Which means we cannot proceed. Lucien stared at her for a beat, then laughed. Actually laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You've got to be kidding me. You're seriously trying to ruin my wedding because of some technical issue? He turned to Victoria. Get your manager. Get whoever's actually in charge here. I want this fixed in the next 5 minutes or I'm suing this entire company into dust. Victoria's face went pale. She looked at Arlene, then back at Lucien. Mr. Lopez, the crisis manager is the on-site authority for situations like this, but if you want the final authority, I can request that person to come down and make the decision. Yes, do that. Get me someone who actually has power instead of wasting my time with staff who clearly have an agenda. He shot Arlene a venomous look. And get her out of here. Victoria hesitated, her hand moving to her own earpiece. I'm calling for final authority now. The room went quiet except for the click of a photographer's shutter and the rustle of fabric as groomsmen shifted uncomfortably. Lucien crossed his arms, jaw set, waiting for whoever he assumed would arrive to override this ridiculous situation and get his wedding back on track. Victoria looked at Arline. Then she looked at Lucien. "Sir, the final authority is already here." Lucien frowned. "What?" Arline reached up and removed her earpiece, setting it carefully on the nearest table. Then she pulled a slim leather credential case from her jacket pocket and handed it to Victoria without a word. Victoria opened it, read the embossed document inside, and her expression shifted into something between shock and understanding. She turned to face Lucien in the room. "Mr. Lopez, this is Arline Holder," Victoria said clearly. "She is the majority owner of Citadel Luxury Venues and the final authority of the Grand Citadel. All operational and contractual decisions are hers to make." The room went completely silent. Lucien's face drained of color. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Arline like she'd materialized out of thin air as something he didn't recognize. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Arline met his eyes with perfect calm. "No, Lucien," she said softly. "It's just something you never bothered to check." Lucien recovered quickly, the way men like him always did when their reality shifted unexpectedly. His face hardened, the shock replaced by something sharper and more dangerous. "You planned this," he said, voice low. "You bought this place just to sabotage me. This is pathetic, Arline. Even for you. I bought this company 3 years ago," Arline said evenly. "Long before you booked it. You chose the Grand Citadel because it matched your ego. Not because I wanted you here. Then fix the drone problem and let my wedding happen. You can't seriously be petty enough to ruin this over some technical issue." Arline pulled her tablet from under her arm and opened the contract file. "This isn't about pettiness. It's about compliance. Section 12, subsection 4. All clients must adhere to mandatory safety protocols for events exceeding 200 guests. The advanced aerial surveillance package is non-negotiable for outdoor ceremonies." She turned the screen toward him. "Your assistant declined it on May 28th to save £17,000. Lucien glanced at the document, jaw tight. "So charge me for it now. Add it to the bill. Problem solved. The system requires 72 hours of installation and calibration. You can't buy it the day of." Arline scrolled to another section. "More importantly, your refusal to comply created a safety breach that puts guests at risk." Section 19. Breach of conduct and safety standards. The final authority reserves the right to terminate any event that violates venue safety protocols. You can't do that. His voice rose, losing its control. "I have 300 guests outside. I have a bride getting ready. I have photographers, caterers, a string quartet. You can't just cancel a wedding. I can when the client creates a contractual violation that compromises guest safety." Arline's voice remained perfectly calm, each word measured. "You tried to cut costs on the one system designed to prevent exactly what's happening right now. That's negligence, Lucien, and it's grounds for immediate termination." One of the groomsmen stepped forward. "Can't you just move the ceremony inside? Would that fix the safety issue?" "It would," Arline said. "If the client hadn't also bypassed the guest security screening for 6 late arrivals, failed to pay the final balance on the perimeter surveillance system, and violated 3 separate conduct clauses by harassing venue staff." She looked directly at Lucien. "You spent the last 2 hours treating me like a servant while simultaneously violating the contract you signed. You can't do both." Lucien's face flushed red. "This is revenge. That's all this is." "This is consequence," Arline corrected. "You wanted the most exclusive venue in Europe, but you didn't want to follow its rules. You demanded perfection but refused to pay for the systems that deliver it. And now, you're standing in a building I own, at an event I have the legal authority to shut down, asking me to ignore your violations because you don't like being held accountable." She closed the tablet with a quiet click. "The contract is terminated, effective immediately. The wedding is cancelled." The room erupted, groomsmen shouting over each other, Victoria frantically trying to speak, photographers lowering their cameras in confusion. Lucien stood frozen, staring at Arline like he was seeing her for the first time in his life. "You can't do this," he said again. But this time it sounded hollow. I already have. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the photographers stopped moving. Cameras hanging uselessly at their sides. Lucien's face went through a series of expressions. Disbelief, rage, then something that looked almost like panic. Arline. His voice changed, losing its edge. Wait. Just wait a second. She didn't respond. She was already typing into her tablet, sending the termination notice to the entire venue staff and activating the evacuation protocol. Arlene, please. Lucien took a step toward her, hands raised in a placating gesture that looked foreign on him. Look, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things earlier. I was just surprised to see you, and I didn't handle it well. But you can't punish 300 people because I was an idiot. I'm not punishing anyone, Arlene said without looking up. I'm enforcing the contract you violated multiple times despite clear warnings. Then let me fix it. I'll pay whatever you want. Double the security fee, triple it. Just let the wedding happen. The safety issue can't be resolved in 20 minutes, and the contract is already void. She finally looked at him. You had weeks to comply. You chose not to. Lucien's desperation sharpened into something uglier. You know what this is really about? You can't stand that I moved on, that I found someone better. You've been sitting here waiting for the chance to ruin this because you're bitter and petty, and you never got over me. Arlene met his eyes with perfect calm. Lucien, I haven't thought about you in 3 years except when your name appeared on a booking request. This isn't about our marriage. This is about you treating my venue like you treated me, as something beneath you that exists to absorb your whims without consequence. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something quiet and final. My career isn't a joke. Your wedding is. She touched her earpiece, reactivating the connection. Security, this is final authority. The Lopez Whitmore event has been terminated for contract violations. Please escort Mr. Lopez, his wedding party, and all guests off the premises immediately. The building is now closed. You can't do this, Lucien said again, but his voice cracked. I just did. The door opened and 4 security personnel entered, professional and efficient. Behind them, through the open doorway, Arlene could hear the rising confusion in the venue, as guests who'd been settling into ceremony seats were now being politely but firmly asked to leave. Victoria stood frozen, tablet clutched to her chest, looking between Arlene and Lucien like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. One of the security officers addressed Lucien with impersonal courtesy. Sir, I need you and your party to come with me. This is insane, Lucien hissed. Do you know who I am? Do you know how much money I have? I will destroy this place. I will destroy you. Arline's expression didn't change. You're welcome to try. The legal team has already been notified and the contract termination is airtight. You violated safety protocols, harassed staff, and failed to meet payment obligations. Every single violation is documented with timestamps and evidence. Through the window, she could see Sasha emerging from the bridal suite in her wedding dress, face confused and mascara already starting to run, as someone explained what was happening. Guests in designer suits and expensive dresses were streaming toward the exits, phones out, already texting and posting about the wedding that had just imploded. Lucien looked at Arline one last time, and in his face she saw the exact moment he understood that he'd lost completely, that the woman he'd dismissed and mocked had just dismantled his perfect day with nothing but competence and a contract he'd been too arrogant to read. I underestimated you, he said quietly. Yes, Arline said. You did. Security escorted him out. The door closed, and Arline stood alone in the suddenly empty groom's suite, listening to the chaos fade as the Grand Citadel emptied itself of Lucien Lopez and everyone who'd come to watch him celebrate. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.